What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football Podcast here on the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. I am not Nate Markham. Nate is sick this week. We wish him a speedy recovery. We miss you. I will be filling in for him. I'm Jorge Edwards. You can find me on Twitter at Jorge B. Edwards. And with me, I got the guys here. Got Hollywood Titan. Hollywood, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
So I don't know if you guys saw this in our pre-show chat. This was full of gin and tonic, and I'm halfway through it. It's a big-ass Tervis tumbler. I added some fruit punch mix to it, and let me tell you, it is dangerous, and I love it. Anywho, Mike Wollert, how you doing, Mike?
Not too bad. So disregard any advice Jorge gives to you tonight.
Exactly. I could tell you today is Wednesday, and you know what? Don't believe me at all. So we are gearing you up, folks, for week 17, aka for a lot of people out there, the fantasy football championships for your IDP leagues. I want to give a shout out though back to Nate Markham. Back-to-back weeks ranked number one ranker in IDP for Fantasy Pros, just in time for the fantasy football playoffs. So literally helping to lead you to a fantasy football championship. So congrats on your back-to-back number one finishes there, Nate. And as we do every week, we're going to take you through news and notes from the IDP landscape around the NFL, hit you with some money and mirage, then go to our plays and fades, and ending with, of course, our sack lunch of the week. And with that, let's get into our news and notes for week 17. Gentlemen, seeing and hearing that J.J. Watt is going to be retiring after this season, a little bittersweet. You know, you kind of wish this guy was an opportunity maybe on better teams to win a championship. But he has to be a Hall of Famer, if not a first ballot Hall of Famer, you think, just because of how dominant he was over the course of his career. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah. I mean, that 2014 season is a Hall of Fame season.
Yeah.
Just in and of itself. But yeah, he's one of those guys that played the game. I mean, you hate to sound like a old curmudgeon, get off my lawn guy, but he played the game the right way. And his press conferences, he was just, sometimes he'd be a little cringy, but he was all just like all about the game and giving people who are paying the money something to watch and something to cheer for.
No, absolutely. You know, he in Hollywood, you let me know what you think about this comparison. I'm going to compare him to a player on offense who also dealt with injuries during his career, but people mostly remember him for his dominant performances. He reminds me a lot of Rob Gronkowski in terms of that type of scenario. A dominant player at their position who battled injuries for several seasons, and you really didn't get to see a whole long-lasting career there, but when you did see him, he was just absolutely dominant. Would that be a fair assessment there?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a fair assessment. And I think I read somewhere that he is the only player with 2 20-sack seasons and 4 15-plus sack seasons.
Unreal. Obviously, a IDP legend. For those who were lucky enough to play him during the prime years, and even to be honest with you, in back-to-back weeks these past couple weeks, he's been producing for you for IDP. Sticking with the Arizona Cardinals, Budda Baker lost for the rest of the season with a fractured shoulder. That just sounds horrible. Jalen Thompson exactly has not been the model of IDP consistency as he was a couple of years ago in terms of his total tackle numbers. What do you think this does for the Cardinals? Do you see Hollywood, maybe Isaiah Simmons moving further back and playing in that safety role that we saw him during training camp play for a majority of the summer? Or do you think somebody else steps up into the secondary and kind of maybe helps produce numbers similar close to Budda? Or is that sacrilege to say?
Well, I definitely think somebody's going to step up. I've not looked exactly to see who that is, but somebody will play that role. For Simmons, I could see him kind of sliding back a little bit and taking some of that slack up a little bit. But I'm not the biggest Simmons fan anyway. So, I think it does help him a little bit, I guess, because he's playing more of a hybrid role, which is kind of his thing, right? His bag or whatever. But
it's interesting. During the summer, we heard the reports from the defensive coordinator there, whose name is eluding me right now, Van Joseph, I think it is. He was saying that, when Isaiah Simmons is further away from the play, he actually produces better on the field because he's able to use his natural athletic ability to close on the ball faster versus being right in and there where the play is happening and he's all discombobulated. And then you heard Chris Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football say the exact same thing. Like, I think Isaiah Simmons is further when he's further away from the play. It's kind of funny how things linger on throughout the course of the season. Speaking of lingering on, J.C. Horn will have surgery on his wrist. And by lingering on, I mean the career of Josh Norman. Still there, going back to Carolina where it all started for him. This is just more NFL news and notes. Obviously, there's no way you'd be starting in a cornerback, specifically Josh Norman, these past couple weeks. Or would you? Just because of snaps. Definitely not this week, right? So I guess if he played in week 18, not even that. Nope. Just a guy. We got here Denzel Perryman to miss the rest of the season with his shoulder injury. Man, this Raiders linebacking core just has gotten annihilated over the course of this season. And we may get into another linebacker for the Raiders who may have potential upside here in a few minutes. So I'll save that for a future discussion. Dallas Cowboys, Micah Parsons is limited with a hand injury, but expected to play tonight. Mike, I don't know if you saw the recent practice reports of the recent inactives list for the Titans, but anybody who could possibly be sat for Tennessee tomorrow is being sat. What is your realistic outlook for Micah Parsons this week?
Well, I'm going to save that for my for the sack lunch.
Okay,
but
I think we all are.
Yeah, I think. Why is everybody being sad?
Tomorrow night is going to be so ugly. I'm not even going to watch the game. I'm not watching the shit show that's coming tomorrow night. Not doing it.
This is a Titans fan who's talking right here. He's not. He's like, no, not me.
Nah, it's not happening.
It's Hollywood. Why are they sitting everybody? We were talking about this earlier. Why are they sitting all these people for Tennessee tomorrow?
Because it doesn't really matter if they lose or win versus Dallas tomorrow. Jacksonville's the game. So if they lose to Dallas, which is expected, that's not going to hurt them. So week 18, they play Jacksonville. That's for all the marbles, right? The division playoffs. So, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, there we go. Switching to Los Angeles for the Chargers, safety Derwin James will not be suspended by the NFL. Kind of think he deserved it after that hit. He after the hit was done and he was being escorted off the field, he kept on pointing to his shoulder. Oh, I hit him with my shoulder. I'm like,
kind of did. I mean,
did it? I don't know, man.
That was such a bang play. But when you see it, I think the link kind of lowered and then he kind of came in with the shoulder. I mean, the head's attached to the shoulder, so they're bound to be some contact.
See,
he didn't deserve to be ejected. He didn't deserve to be ejected. I mean, if you want to give him a penalty, whatever, but
it was a very nasty looking and sounding hit. I will say
he unloaded on him, no doubt. He can missile, yeah.
Crazy that I don't know if Ashton Julian is in the concussion protocol, but crazy that Derwin James is in the concussion protocol after that hit. That is something to be taken very seriously. If Derwin James, obviously, he's not going to be able to play probably this week. Is there anybody for the secondary for the Chargers? Aloy Gilman, somebody that's the guy right there.
Gilman, yeah, he seems to just slide into that role.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, we've talked about this on the show many times where just because there is a backup for a player doesn't necessarily mean you have to start said backup for a player.
No, he's a good backup. He's a good backup. He's not like a Kevon Wallace or who's the guy that the LeCount or like anytime Shedrick Redwine, those are the types of guys you don't need to even bother with that get snaps that are gonna get. Those are guys you don't bother with.
People who you've never even heard of and probably will never hear those names uttered again. To round out the news and notes for IDP for the week, The NFL suspended Broncos defensive end Randy Gregory for 1 game for violations of unsportsmanlike conduct and unnecessary roughness rules. Was this what was happening after the game when Baker Mayfield was doing the post game interview and he had to break up a fight? Was that what that was about, or was this actually during the game? Either other guys are familiar with that.
See, I saw this and I'm not exactly sure. I thought it was the after game antics.
Right.
But a couple places where I read this, it kind of made me not sure. So I honestly, I'm not sure if it was something during the game or.
Sure. No, yeah.
If your defense allows Baker Mayfield to look like Joe Montana, that's all on you, buddy.
that
is all on you. That is a look in the mirror, and that is a you problem. That is not a Baker Mayfield problem.
So I know, obviously, we all play in IDP leagues, but are there still DSTs, the defense special team roster spots in any of the teams in your leagues? Or have you guys completely phased out that position for your fantasy football leagues?
The leagues I play in, I don't have that defensive team special teams anywhere.
What about you, Mike?
I don't think I'm in any. Yeah, I don't think I'm in any defensive leagues.
If I am, I don't realize it, but I'm pretty sure I don't.
I am in one, and that Denver Broncos. It is.
It was a negative like 20.
Well, so the way, and to be honest with you, I don't really know how DST scoring works because I've always played in IDP league, so this is rather a new thing for me. But when the game starts, you're automatically credited 20 points.
Yeah, for a shutout.
Right. Okay. Yes. And then it'll decrease, or increase depending on what happens. Right. Mm-hmm. I went down to like -5, and that totally cost me my semifinal matchup. So that was, and it was so bad that the guy I was playing calls me. He's like, "Man, even I feel sorry for you right now. Like this is completely BS."
You'd been better off just leaving the spot empty.
Kind of.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oof,
that's
rough.
If that's not a sign saying people get that out of your fantasy football leagues, play IDP, I don't know what is. All right, let's head over to our Money and Mirage segment for today's show. And let's get into it. Nate over at fantasyandframes.com wrote a really good piece for his IDP waiver wire article. And I believe his first sentence was, Robert Swain is the man. He's taking on a majority of the snaps here. You're seeing decreasing roles with Devin Bush and Miles Jack. Money and Mirage, Mike, what are your thoughts on Robert Swain?
I mean, right now, if you can get, I say this quite a bit. If there's a chance you can get a guy, if you need him, a guy that's getting 100% of the snaps, this late in the season, and someone who you may need to start, that's fine. He's had 100% of the snaps the last 2 weeks, and even playing just 46 and 53% of the snaps, he's got 19 tackles in the last 2 weeks. Those are numbers that you need to pay attention to. So whether you're picking him up to start him or you're picking him up to prevent somebody else from starting him, I think he definitely needs to be picked up. I wrote about him too. Miles Jack's role has pretty much all but gone away. Devin Bush is Devin Bush, not a very good player. Pittsburgh added Tay Crowder for whatever reason. We're just going to add bad linebackers. We're just going to continue to add bad linebackers to an already bad linebacker position. Robert Spillane is not the next coming of Ray Lewis. He's not Lance Briggs. He's not Brian Urlacher. He's not Kirk Morrison. He's not any of these guys. He's a producer. He's like one of those, who was it from a few years ago, even like Paul Werlo. He's a bad linebacker who just gets tackles, and that's okay. And he's getting the snap volume with a new role. So if you can start him as an LB 3 or 4,
that's where I was going to go with that.
That's where I would go.
What about you, Hollywood?
I agree with what Mike said, but if I don't have to touch him, I'm not. I do get what Mike says. Pick him up just to keep somebody else from picking him up, starting him against you. Absolutely, I get that. But I think he's just a guy, right? With some upside because of the volume, the 100% snaps. Absolutely, if you're looking for that type of player, the upside's there. But outside of that, I mean, there's if you're thinking long term, no, just don't. But if you're looking for immediate help, or maybe, like Mike said, keeping somebody else from beating you with him, yeah, then I'm all for it.
All right, let's go to our next player here. Somebody who has been coming on strong the past few weeks. We're talking about Saints edge rusher Carl Granderson. Let's go with you, Hollywood, this time. Money or Mirage?
I think he's money, right? You got to love the upside with the tackles. 6.5 per game when he gets over 40 defensive snaps. So I look back this year, and I think he's had 5 games with over 40 snaps, and he's averaging 6.5 tackles per game, which for a defensive end, that's huge, right? Because you normally defensive ends, you're looking at TFLs and sacks. So to be able to get those tackle numbers on top of that, I think that's pretty good. And he's probably going to put Marcus Davenport, if he's not already, he's probably going to put him to bed. So I think he's definitely money. I think he's a guy that you can get this year for the playoffs, and I think I like him going forward. He just needs to continue to get that volume, and I think that's where it's at with him.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Davenport, since week 7, his usage and his playing time has just declined. He had 73% of the snaps in week 7 and has not seen over 50% of the snaps since then. Production has hit a cliff, has dove from 9 sacks last year to a half a sack this year in 13 games. That's not good. Granderson, 71% of the snaps last week, is more in the rotation. His playing time has been on the increase. Probably looking at a DL 2 or 3, 15% pressure rate and 25% win rate over the last few weeks. He's getting to the quarterback.
Can you believe that we're talking about Marcus Davenport, the Marcus Davenport that the Saints traded up to get? What was it, back in 2019, 2018 or something?
Mm-hmm.
No, I 100% agree with you guys. The arrows are going in opposite directions, I guess, for both of these players, Davenport and Granderson. So it's good to see him.
I have to admit, I was a huge Davenport fan. Coming out of the Senior Bowl, I was. I liked what I saw. I thought he was a good fit for New Orleans.
So did they.
He showed flashes, right? But flashes
for him, the injuries
what they are, and I don't know that it's going to get any better.
I mean, the injury history for him has always been problematic, but I think everybody saw last year when he came back from injury, he was hella productive, and it's like, well, if he could stay healthy, then he's a great option there. But it's just, even with the playing time, it's just like Mike, as you were just talking about, just So definitely with you guys with money with Granderson. Let's go to another guy, Indianapolis Colt, David. Is it Oda Yingbo? Did I say that correctly? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Oda Yingbo, yeah.
Oda Yingbo. I believe he's splitting snaps with Kwity Paye, if memory serves me correctly. Is that also accurate? I'm not making that up. Regardless of the fact that he's splitting snaps there, super productive, super efficient. Holly, what are your thoughts on this guy, money or Mirage?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think he's money, right? He's shown much needed improvement from year 1 to year 2. He's got 5 sacks in a backup role this year. So I think going into year 3 next year is going to be huge in deciding which way his career goes, right? If he can kind of take another step forward next year, then I think Indianapolis has got a good piece with him. If not, he may fall back the other way, but right now I don't see that happening. I think with Buckner and Grover Stewart and those guys, I think he's learning and not having to – they're kind of teaching him, right, and bringing him along. So I think he's a good development piece that's only going to get better. I mean, 5 sacks in year 2, that's pretty good for especially for a defensive lineman. So
for Dynasty, what would you give up to get him? Or do you think he's not even rostered in some leagues?
Well, if you're in position-specific leagues, he's definitely rosterable, right? Because that type of production, whatever it is, for defensive tackles is kind of hard to find, right?
Right.
So the sack number 5 sacks in a backup role as a defensive tackle, that's pretty huge. So I wouldn't go crazy giving up something for him, but if you can get him I would ask for him in any trade as an add-in. I think that's the way to play it, really. Don't single him out as a piece that you want. Just make your offer and say, hey, what about Odie Yangbo? What if you throw him in? I would almost bet you that in any trade, you can get him as an add-in, and you're probably going to win if you do that.
Not speaking of add-ins, but winners by default. Luke Masterson, Mike. He's literally the WWF last man standing in that linebacking core here for the Las Vegas Raiders. We just found out today on the offensive side of the ball that Derek Carr is being sat the last 2 weeks of the season. Jarrett Stidham is in, which, by the way, also, did you see the report that Derek Carr is taking some time away from the team the past? The minute I read that, I'm like, all right, dude is, Devontae Adams.
He doesn't want to be a distraction. That's why he's leaving. It's now you're leaving, so
that's the distraction.
Now people are going to be asking why he's leaving. Yeah, now you've made it worse.
So it becomes the question then: is Aaron Rodgers a Vegas Raider next year, or is Devontae Adams asking for a trade? Because something, which is not neither, probably going to happen. So it's crazy. But getting back to Masterson, Mike, is he somebody that you would trust inserting as an LB2 into your lineup this week in championship weekend?
LB2, no.
Okay. No. What about like LB3?
I mean, 3 or 4, yeah. I think I'll probably say this again. I think now week 17 isn't the time to get cute with some of these deep sleepers. Yep. I mean, he's probably gonna have a big role. I mean, he played 84% of the snaps last week. He's probably gonna play close to 100% of the snaps. He's got a good matchup. So I'm like, if I'm in the league and if I'm in a shallow league where if I'm playing maybe 2 or 3, I mean, say I've got, say I drafted Jordan Brooks, right, and say my LB2 is Dre Greenlaw. There's no way I'm playing Luke Masterson over those 2 guys.
Right.
Now if I'm in a 3 where I've got someone like Jordan Brooks and I've got Dre Greenlaw and I'm kind of going back and forth between maybe Frankie Louvu, Quincy Williams, and Luke Masterson. Okay, Masterson is definitely in the conversation with that matchup and his potential volume. So that's where he'll come into play. If he plays 65% or more of the snaps, he's averaging well more than 6 tackles a game. He's got a pretty decent tackle rate. But again, he's got now a good path to snaps and a good path to volume. So I'm interested, but based on your league, it kind of all depends on your league. Like if you're to ask, oh, hey, I've got Devin White and I've got Devin White and I've got Jordan Brooks and I've got Isaiah Simmons, and no, he's probably not gonna. I'm not gonna start Masterson over those guys. But if you waited on the linebacker position in your draft, and you've got a group of guys that that don't stand out as elite, yes, he'll be in the conversation to start this week.
All right, let's go to a matchup here or a player here that Hollywood and we kind of have differing opinions on, and I guess it's very specific to a certain type of league. Let's talk about Kyle Van Noy. I mean, the past 3 weeks, 7 pressures, 2 quarterbacks hits, and a sack, 10 pressures. He had 10 pressures and 3 sacks the past 3 weeks. Going against Haverstein of the Rams this week, who's allowed 7 pressures, 2 QB hits, and a sack. Look, I'm buying it. I'm buying it if I can insert him into my DL spot. If he's DL LB eligible, if he's purely just a linebacker, I can find other high tackle volume linebackers. But I want to say at least for sleeper, he's DL LB eligible, so that kind of helps those in those leagues. Are you drinking that? Are you drinking the Kool-Aid on that, Mike? Or are you kind of like, he just has been, a product of great matchups, but that might not be the case this week.
I don't even think Kyle Van Noy has ever been on my radar at all this year.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I had him as a chasing upside pick this week going against Braden Smith, who basically stands aside and lets people rush to the quarterback for Indianapolis this week. And so he got a sack. I mean, he's very consistent in allowing these pressures to turn into production. So and we all know how bad the Rams offensive line is. And so I figure this is one of these situations where he really is a product of the matchup. And it just so happens he has, an okay match, not a great matchup, but an okay matchup this week. For a DL spot. So if you have like a DL3 spot.
I guess if he's in a DL spot, but granted, he's got sacks in 3 straight, but those were the first 3 sacks of his season in these last 3 games.
He's also seeing more playing time down the stretch of this season than he was seeing previously.
Yeah, I guess. And that's still not translating to a whole lot of production.
So he's been basically sack dependent. I mean, yes,
he's sacked. Yeah, he's
sack dependent.
Yeah, like I said, he hasn't really been on my radar all year.
I feel like I say Kyle Van Noy as a startable option, and I could just see you reaching for the steel wool, wanting to scrub it off your body, just hearing.
I do. Just,
with Clorox, just ugh.
All right, Hollywood, what's your take on Van Noy?
Did he pay you? You were like in his family or something?
Maybe.
Is he a long lost relative or something?
I cannot confirm nor deny. Said look, he's had really good matchups the past year. Like that's what it is.
Really, he has 3 sacks in the last 3 weeks, right? 1 each week. And when I was looking at the show sheet, that never even freaking dawned on me. I was thinking linebacker, and I'm like, ugh. Get away, right? Just yuck. And me and you were kind of talking before the show, and you kind of mentioned it, and you was like, well, in defensive line eligible leagues, and I was like, well, he's on, you may be onto something with a hot streak there, a sack each week, but I got to think there's better options unless you're just absolutely desperate. And I've got him in a couple leagues, right? And I'm just like, ugh, this is nasty.
Let me ask you a question. With Bud Dupree not playing tomorrow night, would you throw in Kyle Van Noy?
I'd take Van Noy over Dupree, even if Dupree was playing. Dupree's trash.
All right, let's go on to our last player here for Money and Mirage, and I really apologize for potentially butchering this name. Is it Ifeatu? Is it Ifeatu Melanfonwu? Did I get that completely wrong, or does anybody have a better pronunciation? What was that?
I think you said
not melon.
Melanfonwu. Melanfonwu. Money and Mirage, Hollywood.
Well, after that debacle of the name, I don't.
Let's not insult him further by calling him.
It's a mirage, right? I'm not chasing a 1-week wonder on a team with better options at the position. I'm just not doing it.
I think he's one of those. If you just because you can doesn't mean you should.
There we go.
Exactly.
I think he's one of those guys.
I mean, if you're super freaking virgin on a prom night desperate, maybe take a wing at it, but outside of that, no, it's not happening.
It's closing time at the bar.
Why are you looking at the ceiling, Jorge? I told you before the show, this is what you're getting.
Virgin on a prom night desperate. That's a phrase I never thought I'd hear, nor probably ever will repeat ever again. But you know what? Hey, we're on Shoot the Gap. This is how we roll, baby. I don't really have a segue into this one, to be honest with you folks. We had like 2 names on our Shake It Off segment, and to be honest with you, to tell you that Jesse Bates and Kyle Duggar have seen better days and will see better days goes without saying. So we're just going to get this one out of the way right now.
Cause the players gonna play, and the haters gonna hate, baby. I'm just gonna shake. Shake it off. Heartbreakers gonna break, and the fakers gonna fake, baby. I'm just gonna shake.
So, Hollywood, be honest. Has that song grown on you over the course of the season?
Like a bad freaking rash.
Well, if it makes you feel better, there was 1 week where you weren't here where Mike opened the door to a potential video montage for a song. I forget what it was. Or else you'd be hearing
you
it.
forget Mike's, but you continue with mine each week. Well, thank you.
Yes. You're well. I care about you, Hollywood. I want to make sure you're not forgotten.
I hate you, right?
You're welcome.
You got me blocked on Twitter for a week.
That I did not get you blocked on Twitter. You got yourself blocked on Twitter for the week.
No, you provoked me. You're a provoker.
Well, you know what?
You're a habitual line stepper.
Well,
yes,
maybe just
that's
maybe
what he is. Yes.
Maybe just maybe when Taylor Swift is included in the tweets that we're tweeting back and forth with one another, going after a habitual line stepper is not the time to do that then and there. Anyhow.
Oh, you know me, I'm not pulling no punches. I don't care who's on the
Fair enough. All right, let's get into our plays and fades for week 17, where we talk about one player that we're high on this week, one that we're kind of not, at DL, LB, and defensive back. I'll get us going with defensive lineman. Going to go with Gregory Rousseau. Fantasy Pros has him as the ECR 23, I believe. Look, since week 14, he's had 10 pressures, 2 sacks, and a 14.8% win rate, facing career backup Hakeem Adeniji. I kid you not. Reading the reports this week, the defensive line coach said, "Well, with Hakeem, this is kind of where we're at. We don't really have a lot of other options, aka better options. So this is who's taking over for Lyle Collins, who missing the rest of the season with, I think it was like an MCL tear and an ACL tear, really hurt his knee really bad. So going from one bad situation to another bad situation here for the Bengals on Monday Night Football, which everybody's heralding as this, amazing Monday Night Football game that people haven't seen a Monday Night Football game like this in a while. And I think they're underselling the fact that this is going to be fun to watch on defense also. And I think Rousseau could keep his pressure tally going and definitely get a sack or potentially 2 here this week. Just great upside with Gregory Rousseau. As far as a fade here, this may be low-hanging fruit here. We talked about Carl Granderson for the Saints, who's just been on the upward climb to fantasy success. Somebody who's just been fizzling and flaming out all season long for the Saints has been Cameron Jordan. Yes, last week, what he have 7 tackles for Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. He got you 11.5 points. This is a situation in a matchup where you're not chasing that. Not against Philadelphia, not against Jordan Mailata, who's one of the best offensive linemen in all of football. And if anything, Granderson, he should have the edge at edge, if you see what I just said there, with No Lane Johnson there on the other side for the Philadelphia Eagles, who's out to the playoffs. This is by far, for IDP purposes, in my opinion, for the New Orleans Saints, the Granderson show to close out the season. And Cameron Jordan is just somebody who, for a lot of people, may just on name value, for the novices in IDP, we like, ooh, Cameron Jordan. I remember his name. That name rings a bell. He must be good. He's not. You can do better. And in fact, if you're in those type of leagues that are shallow, Granderson's probably on your waiver wire. You can pick him up right now and sort of into your starting lineup. For those who are a little bit more advanced, Granderson's been on your radar for a while. For either of you guys, anybody have any differing takes on or opinions on those 2 players, or are we good to go to linebacker? Nope. Okay, fantastic. Let's go to linebacker here. Mike, you got linebackers for us here. I'm a fan of this first one that you picked. Needless to say, I'm 100% biased, but he's also been playing well. Why don't you tell us about this linebacker? Who's your play of the week?
I have Jamin Davis as my play. Fantasy Pros has him as their LB29. I've got him as my LB15, right around the spot, right around the Eric Kendricks type, right in that area. And what was really, and I might even, if I had Kendricks and Jamin, I might even start Jamin Davis over Eric Kendricks. I don't know what's going on with the linebacker rotations in Minnesota, but I don't know what is up with these teams inserting crazy linebacker rotations at the end of the season.
No, you're right. Like what you call it. Sorry to interrupt. Continue.
No, but these crazy linebacker rotations. Using Brian Asamoah now a few for some snaps and taking Kendricks off the field, and now Hicks. I don't know, but but Jamin Davis, yeah, definitely is going to be almost a borderline LB1 play. He's had no fewer than 8 tackles in 4 straight games. He's got a 15.5% tackle rate with 0 missed tackles over the last 4 games. And actually, I think his missed tackles have been 0 for more than 4 games. Inside linebackers recording 13 tackles a game against the Browns. I'm hoping, basically what I'm kind of hoping, again, more run with Hunt and Chubb. It is funny, though. I don't know why the Browns are being called a pass-happy team. Browns ran the ball 34 times last week. Watson threw the ball 31 times. They're still running the ball a little bit more. So, yeah, Jamin Davis, borderline LB1 this week. My fade, again, it's week 17. I've got a hard time really kind of fading anybody that has a high snap volume. So it's just not, again, a week to get cute with some of these deeper sleepers. I think I mentioned, we mentioned a few names. Like, again, if you're coming in with a linebacker group of, like, again, Devin Lloyd, Jordan Hicks, Dre Greenlaw, Alex Singleton, maybe who are some other names? If you've got kind of like I said, if you waited on the position, he'll be some of these guys will be in your radar, but like Reggie Ragland, I'm not starting. Those guys aren't going to be on my radar. Reggie Ragland had a good game. He only played 61% of the snaps. When you don't have the volume to be able to put up, those numbers are going to be very inconsistent. Like even Kenneth Murray, he has a very low tackle floor. You're going to see some points because he makes some big plays, which again are kind of unsustainable. So again, now is not the time to get cute with some of these deeper plays. If there was one guy I definitively would fade and not play if I had him, it's Jerome Baker. He's just been completely inefficient as a full-time linebacker. So that's, if I was going to fade somebody and not play him at all, it would be Jerome Baker.
Let me ask you about somebody that I see people kind of teetering on the edge about and having back and forth discussions. Let's talk about Jermaine Pratt, one of the better run-stopping linebackers, according to PFF, and run-stopping percentage. You look back at a lot of his production, though, the past couple of weeks, it's been not so much tackle-heavy as it is just been making plays in the passing game. A linebacker like that, a coverage linebacker who has been consistent for you, but is reliant on making splash plays, is that somebody that you'd still roll into Week 17 with as one of your linebackers, knowing that you are big play dependent to a certain degree? Or is it one of those things where you're like, you know what, this person just makes plays and I'm going to, they're going to make plays for me, or I'm going to go with that, or they're going to, wet the bed, and that's just how it's going to be?
A 3 or 4. If you're starting for at least 3 or 4 linebackers, maybe. He's got the snap volume, and he has a relatively decent track record for tackles. So, he's just looking at his numbers. He's 5 away from 100, which is not difficult in this day and age now where we're playing 17 games, but he's exceeded last year's total of total tackles. Not as many solos from last year as he did this year as he did last year, but track record of tackles. And, like I said, he's kind of in that 3 or 4, your 3rd or 4th, just because he is getting at least a decent snap volume. He's around 75% of the snaps total. So this day and age, with so many linebackers coming off of dime and nickel, you almost have those guys that are playing more than 75% of the snaps are usually in the conversation for some of the deeper leagues where you're starting 3 to 4 to 5 linebackers in a league if you're in a deeper league. But if you're like at 1 or 2, no, he's he probably is not sniffing a starting lineup.
Okay. Let's go finish off here, plays and fades, with defensive back. Hollywood, who's your play at defensive back this week?
Yeah, I think it's this week, and for some reason, if your league plays into next week, right? A lot of leagues try to avoid that final week, But if that's the case, then one Thornhill for Kansas City is the guy. Nice matchup this week versus Denver team that is just they're spiraling into an abyss. They fired their head coach. Russell's not cooking. I mean, it's bad. It's bad in Denver. And 3 weeks ago versus Denver, Thornhill had 7 tackles, 5 solos, a sack, and a PBU. So, I think you got to play him again this week. And then if you're kind of looking ahead, like I said, if you got that 18-week, he's got the Raiders, and they've just benched Carr for the next 2 weeks or the rest of the season. So that's definitely a play that I'm looking for right there.
Did you hear today, this is kind of going off topic, but the Denver Broncos owner came out and said the new head coach will report to me directly, not the GM. That
has worked really well in Cleveland in the past.
Yeah, well, as a Washington fan and Dan Snyder hater, yeah, this is going to work beautifully. All right, your defensive back fade for us, Hollywood.
The absolute disgust that Mike said that with was awesome. Oh, shoot.
Not to say many things have worked here in Cleveland, but the whole coach and reporting to the owner has
so stupid.
Has been.
It kind of reminds you of Dallas, right? In a way, that's.
But at least you know that coming in,
right?
And Jerry Jones has been there longer than friggin' Snake Oil Haslam.
Right. Oh.
Who we got for a defensive back fade, Hollywood?
Oh man, I just want to touch on what Mike said. Right now is not the time to get cute with your rosters and whatever, but man, Adrian Phillips, 18 tackles in the last 6 games, and that's since the bye week, right? 6 games since the bye week, he has 18 total tackles, and he's playing under 40% of the snaps, and he's only had 1 start. I mean, if you're still starting him at this point, God bless your heart. I mean, just woof. I mean,
I don't even think I've ranked him in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. I mean, earlier in the season, maybe, but since the bye week, which I think was week 12, he's just been a complete dud. So, yeah.
We should put out a poll after we post this podcast tomorrow of who is Mike more disgusted with? Adrian, in terms of talk of playing this week, Adrian Phillips or Kyle Van Noy? Which one does he just feel the most disgust for IDP upside or relevance this week? I'm kind of yeah, exactly.
Can we throw Cleveland Brown ownership in there? Because I feel like
sure.
Oh no, you got no, because that'll be a clear runaway winner. that'll skew the results.
Love it. Love it. All right, folks, let's finish up here with our our sack lunches for the week, where we give you one person that we believe is guaranteed to give you a sack. Oh, it's happening. Oh wow, I didn't see this. Oh yeah, it's going down. Yelling timber tomorrow. Is that how the song goes? Whatever. It's going down against.
You just referenced Keisha right here. Did you really?
I just did. Is that who? Is that? I'm surprised you know who actually sings that song, because I did not until just now. So, really, you knew that it was Kesha, Hollywood? As he flips you the bird for those who are not watching but listening. Let's get into our stack lunch this week. Mike, why don't you get us started with the Tennessee Titan bashing?
I feel like anything that the three of us is going to say is going to apply to all three right here.
Jesus. So I was doing as I was doing my waiver article this week, because I looked. Oh, okay. Agbanya Okoronkwo had 2 sacks. I'm like, okay. The first one was pretty decent. Had a nice spin move. The second one, Dennis Daly's controller just malfunctioned, because Uncle Ronquo was already past Dennis Daly before Daly even knew what was going on. So if Micah Parsons, he's lining up on Dennis Daly's side of the field.
Correct.
He's got a bad hand, man. Come on.
Oh, well.
Oh, he could have a bad hand. He can have a bad leg. He could have.
He could be missing his hand.
He
I'd
could
still
be.
scared of Micah
Yeah, I
Parsons.
mean,
That's not nice
he
for
could
a-
be. He could be the Black Knight with all of his limbs sliced off, and he's gonna get a sack. And he's gonna get at least one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a hat trick this week.
Yeah, I would be comfortable saying he gets at least 2.
I mean, I'm saying he gets a hat trick. I mean, this is just gonna be ugly.
So
it's not going to be ugly. It's going to be fugly. Straight up fugly this week.
this is how ugly it's going to get. I'm going to talk
I
about.
don't even need to go to the analysis on Micah Parsons. I don't need to give you metrics.
No,
I don't need to give anything.
Just know somebody may die tomorrow for the Tennessee Titans. Let me talk to you about an edge rusher who, since week 14, I believe, has a win rate against offensive linemen of, I want to say, under 6%. Yet he's going up against one of the worst offensive linemen in the NFL, backup, tomorrow night. I'm talking about DeMarcus Lawrence going against Nicholas Petit-Frere, who will not be playing among a lot of Titans. And I don't even remember the name of the backup that he's going against. If there's anybody that he could have an upside play with to at least get you a sack against this week, it's this matchup right here. I mean, this is just going to be so ugly. Man, it's going to be so bad. I'm sorry, Hollywood. I generally feel bad for your fandom right now as a Titans fan.
This is going to be so ugly that nothing anybody can say to me is going to offend me, because this is going to be straight up nasty.
That's a challenge. Now you give me more time to antagonize you after that comment.
No, like I told you, I'm not watching this game tomorrow because this is going to be nasty. It's going to be straight nasty.
I really wish I had a Taylor Swift reference to just say right now, but I don't have it on the top of my head. That's why Nate is the host of the show, and I'm not.
I hate you.
Let's finish this off here, Hollywood, with who is your sack lunch tomorrow?
So first of all, Mike cheated with Micah Parsons. That's just like a cheat code. That's just straight up cheating right there. So I'm thinking, okay.
No, he said 3 sacks.
I said
though.
3.
That's not cheating.
That's still cheating. He may have 5 tomorrow.
He may literally kill somebody tomorrow. They may
kill
the towel boy.
A Hurst on the field and take somebody away tomorrow.
I mean, Parsons only has 1 sack in his last 4 games, so I mean, he hasn't been that great over the last couple of weeks. So
you're sitting there with a straight face trying to say that, really?
I don't really see a straight face. I see a smile, but that's just me.
So anyway, he cheated. Then I thought, okay, that's fine. I'll let him have that. And then you got
rules in sack lunch. I can name whoever we can name whoever we want.
That's right.
So yeah, I feel like out of the 3 of us, I'm going to win this because I'm taking Dorrance Armstrong, Dallas. Tennessee is just so talent deficient on that offensive line with injuries, and it's not good. They're going to rest most of their starters, and Armstrong is second on the team with 8 sacks. So,
well, since 3 of us went Dallas,
I feel like the
edge rushers.
Yeah, but I feel like the pecking order is Parsons, Lawrence, and Armstrong, right? So if I get a sack over you guys, I win because Armstrong's probably like the 3rd option there.
So this is what's happening tomorrow. We've all picked Dallas edge rushers, and everybody get a sack. You know exactly what's going to happen.
18 sacks.
Malik Willis.
No. The Washington Hogs offensive line is going to show up, and they're going to allow nothing.
Seriously, have you
the
watched
Hogs are going to show
the
up
past few weeks?
And a wall is going to show up, and all you're going to see 2 total hurries.
See, I think
oh my God.
Malik Willis.
Ridiculous.
Malik Willis is going to channel the 2007 Vince Young and evade all pressures tomorrow. And
no way. He better channel some Cunningham / Michael Vick shit for tomorrow. Going to need it.
No! I know the video just broke up at the right time, but you got what he was talking about, folks. while we're waiting for Hollywood to get back, Mike,
I'm
we
back.
talked about.
He
You froze for a second, so we had to.
Oh, did I? I said he better channel some Randall
We heard-
Cunningham, Michael Vick shit, and I don't even know that that's going to help him at this point.
Fair enough.
If I'm him, I'm on the playground. When they hike the ball, I'm throwing it straight up in the air and running the other way.
Because I'm sure that's exactly what the coaches would really want to see.
Vrabel would love it, sure.
He's like, yeah, just have fun, make it street ball for this week. Who cares? We'll get ready for week 18. Let's finish up the show with giving some advice, like we talked about earlier before we got into news and notes. You know, it's for a lot of you championship weekend. Mike, you did a really good job of hammering home the point over the course of the show. Like, don't get cute, look for opportunity. At what point, though, would you say you have to ditch name value and go for production? Let me give you an example. Devin White hasn't exactly been Devin White-ish this season, if you catch my drift. Levante David has been playing more of the run-stopping role than Devin White. If you had to pick a Bucks linebacker here, in recent weeks, that is, referring to Levante David. If you had to pick a Bucks linebacker here to insert into your roster, would you still go with the name of Devin White because he brings you that potential upside, or do you go with the consistency that David has brought you the past few weeks?
I think I'd probably still go with Devin White.
Okay.
Both of them. I mean, it's a decent matchup against Carolina for both of them, but I'm probably still going to go with White. You've got those top 20 linebackers that are pretty much matchup proof. Like you could be sitting. I mean, you could have Fasade Lokon, and he could have a game in a matchup against the worst. You're not benching him. You got the certain group of guys that are just matchup proof. You're going to ride those guys, and then you've got last week someone asked me if they should start DeMarcus Lawrence, or if they should start Michael Hecht because of the matchup against Denver. And I said, no, start Lawrence. It's crazy. And then, of course, Michael Hecht has a multi-sack game or close to it. I think he had 1.5. So, when it comes to that, that's one thing. But I don't know. There's just guys that I'm going to ride. They've got me there. And those are guys that are just going to be, I'd rather lose and have those guys in my lineup, or I think that's what I'm trying to say. I'd rather lose
with them in your lineup
with them in my lineup. I'd rather win. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I think I'm getting drunk through your Tumblr.
What you're trying to say is,
sure.
I don't know how I'm trying to say it.
You trust them, and you're putting them in your lineup.
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Because what's going to happen is, you'd bench him and they're going to go off, and the guy that you replaced him with is going to put up his dud. So I'm blaming it on Jorge. Jorge, your alcohol is coming through my Wi-Fi.
Well, you're welcome, because it's delicious. Hollywood, what about you? Where do you stand on name versus production?
Yeah, like you said, Mike said it a million times. Don't get cute this late in the year, right? And you're talking about name recognition, and I always go back to a few years ago when Randy Moss was in New England. I had the number 1 seed, and I thought, man, New England's going to the Jets. It's snowing there. Moss is not going to do his thing, and I benched him, right? And he absolutely just freaking tore them up, hand up in the air. And from that point forward, this late in the season, I'm going to stick with what got me there, right? If it's the names that got me there, unless just something crazy changes, an injury, like a severe injury or something like that, I'm staying with the names. Levante may be, quote unquote, the safer play, but like Mike said, if I bench Devin White and he goes off, I'm starting the name. Go with what got you there.
There we go. I love it. Love it. So that's going to wrap us up here for Shoot the Gap Week 17. We will be doing another episode next week. We'll keep going. We'll keep this train going. We plan to have episodes going throughout the off season as well, even though technically there's no off season, if you know what I'm talking about, to all the Dynasty folks out there. But for those who are heading into their championships, obviously you're heading into your championships. What am I saying? Good luck this week. Hopefully over the course of the season, we've been giving you great advice to help navigate your wins and losses, and hopefully we've helped you get more wins than losses. And if you need any help whatsoever here for lineup questions and starting sits, always make sure to reach out to Mike Wohler at Mike_Wohler, as well as head over to 4for4 Football and read all of his IDP content. Hollywood Titan on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast, IDP Nation. Head over to their website for content. And, of course, follow Nate and myself over at fantasyandframes.com. That's Nate Markham on Twitter, Jorge B. Edwards on Twitter, at fantasyandframes.com. And we're going to be available here for you heading into championship weekend. Good luck. Seriously, have fun. Enjoy. We want to hear you say that you win a championship next week. And we couldn't be more excited for everybody who's competing for a title. So for Mike, for Hollywood, I'm Jorge. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Nate, we'll see you back next week. And take care, folks.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year's.